Hi all, Renato here. In this video I want to share my experience with n8n, a low-code platform specific for AI agentic workflows. When I first heard about this, I thought it was going to be the perfect fit for small projects I had in mind for a while. A rugged chatbot based on YouTube captions. And in particular, I had in mind one YouTube channel, Noah Seidman, aka Captain Rational. He often goes live on YouTube and has these monologues about macroeconomics and crypto businesses. He is very knowledgeable and has a unique perspective, and since I rarely catch him live, I wish I could have a chatbot based on YouTube captions to ask questions to. So my idea then will be based in two big parts. The first part would be getting all the data, right? And I wanted this process to be iterable, so I wanted it to the first time, right, download all the YouTube captions, and then every day it would run again automatically and download only the new captions, right, and process them. Compute the embeddings, put them in a vector store, and then the second part would be to have a chatbot, right, based on the vector store. I can tell you straight away, n8n, in my experience, was a very good fit for the second part. It made it very easy, not so much the first part. So then let's start with what n8n does well. Once you have the vector store, it is very simple to make a chatbot out of it. You just need to create an account in n8n for your OpenAI account with the API key, right? There's also other LLM providers. I used OpenAI for testing, and have the AI agent node connected to the LLM provider, your vector store, and also the embedding computer, right? Because when you ask a question, also that has to be embedded, and then a similarity search done on the vector store. So I have Quadrant as the vector store and Ollama for the embeddings, and both of these are deployed locally. Everything is in one Docker Compose file. You can find a link to in the details of the video. The one trouble I had with this was that in the Quadrant vector store node, it wasn't clear at all which field it's expecting the full text to be in. In Quadrant, you have for each chunk of text, you have its actual vector embedding and then metadata, and one of these has to contain the full text, so that when you query the RAG, it needs to find the actual text or give it to the LLM, right? So the LLM can generate a response based on the text it found in the RAG. And that's why, as you see, there's the same text in three different fields. First I had it in the text, but then by looking online, it looked like maybe the page content field was the correct one. I have a small bash script that will take all the nodes in the vector store and copy the field to a new field. So I ran the script first with the page content name, but then still it wasn't working, and then with the actual content. That's what the Quadrant vector store node is expecting, to find the text in the content field. That's the one trouble I had with this. Okay, the actual painful part though was making this workflow, which would be the preceding step, right? The one that will actually download the caption. It needs to keep some state, right, to know which captions it already downloaded, and then for the new ones, process them and put them in the vector store. If I had to do it again, I would definitely just do this in Python. It would be much simpler. I really had to fight with n8n to do things that I thought were simple, like writing and reading to a file. This is a simple prototype. Of course, in a more serious version of this, you would write the state of the captions to a database, right? But for as a prototype, I'll just have a file where I write the video IDs of the videos I already processed and then read from that at the beginning of the workflow. This was actually pretty hard because of some problem related to these nodes expecting binary data, but then has to be converted to text data, and you have to, I wasn't able to access this data in subsequent nodes and so on. Apart from this, I made a mistake straight away, and then I paid for it at the end. I didn't realize that the captions have to be chunked. So I started off this workflow with thinking, okay, the state file will be simply the video IDs of the captions, but then later on I realized if the process actually interrupts halfway, it might be I processed half of the chunks related to one video. So then the state file should include all the video IDs and the chunks that have been processed. When I realized this, it was at the end, just the idea of going in and modifying the whole workflow to fix this bug, it gave me a headache. That being said, conceptually the workflow is quite easy. There are two options to trigger it. Either you click and then you get a full sync. By the way, I'm using a YT DLP utility to download all the data from YouTube. And when you do a full sync, it will use that to get all the video IDs from the channel. Whereas the scheduled trigger, the one that will run every day, that uses the RSS feed that YouTube provides, which is much faster. The problem is that we only gave you, I think, the last 10 or 15 videos. So my idea idea was, okay, the first time you run this workflow, you will trigger it manually. It will take many hours if there are many videos, but it will get all of them, right? Because it's using YTDLP. And then the other times it will just use the RSS feed. This is just to get the video IDs, right? The first step. Then for each video ID, we have to get the captions. And this again is done via YTDLP. We have some cleaning of the captions, and then we write all the state to files. And finally, there is a step that reads the processed captions. It chunks them up. And here for the chunking also, there was an unsatisfactory solution because the captions, they don't have punctuation. Now I found on Hugging Face, there are some models that will add punctuation for you. And I thought about doing that, but then I was already struggling so much with n8n. It was taking so much time. This being a prototype, I just let that aside. So the captions basically are one huge long sentence. This means that I had to do the naive chunk. So I just set the chunk size to 800 characters and the overlap to 200. But in the end, it does kind of work, right? And it's appropriate for a prototype. And then for each chunk, I have this loop. I first query Olama. I get the embedding of that chunk. And then I prepare the JSON and I put it into Quadrant. And if all of these steps were successful, I update the state file and I keep looping. The prototype, I would say, even with my bug and with duplicate entries in the Quadrant vector store because of various test runs that kind of overlapped each other, it does work. But yeah, it wasn't a great experience, the data gathering part. I realized n8n is not meant for that. The real strength of n8n is integrations, right, with Confluence and Airtable, all these services. If you want to do a chatbot based on a Confluence wiki, right, probably with this, it's very easy. But if you want to do this kind of workflow, I would recommend, for at least for the data gathering and processing, to just do it something else that's more appropriate for the purpose. Other problems I had with n8n, by the way, are debugging. Like it's really hard, especially because I'm not sure why, but I couldn't execute just one node. It gave me a message like execution data is too large. You have to re-execute the whole workflow. So if I would just change a setting in one node and I would want to see how that changes the output, I couldn't do that. And this, to be honest, makes me very suspicious because it smells like maybe they are loading something in the browser memory, and maybe there's some limit on that, because otherwise in such a DAG workflow, right, one of the minimum features that you can require is that when you stop computation at one point, that result for that is cached somewhere, right? And then you can re-execute only that node without having to re-execute everything. So that slowed down development a lot, especially at the beginning when I was downloading all the captions. I had basically changed the workflow just for debugging later parts. So yeah, I might revisit this and write it in Python, because I still would like to have an accurate chatbot with Captain Rational, talk about macroeconomics and new DeFi businesses. Yeah, and you will find all the files linked down below in the description. I'll put them on GitHub with some instructions on how to replicate this. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this type of content, and let me know in the comments. Goodbye.